I came across a short article last night that I think highlights something that all of us struggle with at some level, even though most of the time we don't even realize it. So let's go ahead and talk about it and what I believe can help us in dealing with this, so that way we don't end up in a similar situation as Chris Cuomo. So now, if you don't know who Chris Cuomo is, he's a former lead anchor of CNN who was fired in 2021 for advising his brother through some accusations. But as Chris has stated publicly, he didn't take the firing very well. In a recent interview, he said that he was so mad after getting fired that he was going to end everyone and then end himself. And after he said that, he elaborated by saying that things can consume you. So since then, he started a new YouTube channel that hasn't been performing as well as he had hoped. He was used to getting a whole lot of views every day while he worked at CNN, and he just isn't seeing that same level of success on YouTube so far. Of course, this has been really hard on him, and it's something that's been extremely emotionally difficult for him to deal with. But he says that now he's finally learning to come to terms with it. As the article states, he's coming to an acceptance of the situation, knowing that his days of being number one as a primetime anchor at a major news network are over. He said, "I'll never be that again. That was taken from me, I believe wrongly." And by the way, can I just say that it takes a lot of courage to admit something like that to ourselves, let alone to everyone else. So kudos to Chris for his honesty there. But this article should prompt a few questions in your mind. And one of them should be, have you ever wondered why one person can get fired from a job and be okay and move on and be fine, and then someone else gets fired and they want to end themselves and everyone else? Why is it that some of us can lose a career and be fine while others feel like they literally have nothing left to live for? In reality, all of us have something like this. And so for you, it might not be a dream job or a career. Maybe it's being successful or having the right spouse or being a great parent or being a YouTuber or even being the most spiritual person in the room. At different points in my life, I think it's been all of those things at one time or another for me. So what is that thing for you? And if you're having a hard time figuring out what it is, then it can be anything that in your heart you say, if I don't get this thing, or if I lose this thing, then I lose my desire to get out of bed in the morning and I don't even want to be here anymore. Whatever that thing is, that's the thing that it is for you. It's important for us to identify what those things are, because those things are the modern day idols that we devote ourselves to in our hearts. For Chris, it seems that it may have been his career that he believed justified his existence. So once it was taken away from him, he didn't want to live anymore and wanted nothing more than to seek revenge to the people who he believed took it away from him. So what Chris did, whether he knows it or not, is he found the functional God of his heart. Whatever we functionally believe in our hearts justifies our existence or makes us valuable. That's the God of our hearts. The one that we would sacrifice anything for. The one that makes our lives worth living. And the one that we would do anything in order to have in our lives. Now, the unfortunate part about those things is that even though they're usually good things, they're still only finite. If we place our trust and our security in our career, then what happens if we lose our career? If we place our security and our trust in another person, well, people change and they can leave, and unfortunately, people die. This is why these functional idols or these functional gods in our hearts keep us anxious, because if they get taken from us, then like Chris, we will be completely and utterly devastated. So how do we avoid having this happen to us? Well, our gut instinct is to say not to get too attached to something or someone, or not to live for anything in particular. But that just isn't going to work, because we're all wired to live for something. So it's simply not possible for us to live for nothing and be emotionally stable. So that can't be the answer. The real answer can be found in something that all of us are probably familiar with, and that's the first commandment. When God tells us not to have any other gods before him, he isn't saying this for his sake. He's saying this for our sake. These idols, these false gods, when we place our ultimate hope and trust in them, then they'll let us down. They can't save us, and they won't ever fully satisfy us. It's not as if we're violating God's nature when we do this. We're violating our own nature, the way that we were created and the way that we're supposed to operate. It's only when we come to know the true God and we put him first that we'll come to have all of the peace that these false gods promise but can't deliver on. Our ultimate hope and purpose won't die if our career or our spouses do, because our ultimate hope and value isn't found in those things. Now, of course, it's painful and it hurts if we do lose those things, because most of the time these idols are good things. But if God is at the center of our worlds, then no matter what storms come for us, our world will still be standing because he's our rock. So with that being said, I hope that you take a second to pause this video and really think about what these idols look like in your life. What's that one thing that if you lost it or if you didn't get it, then it would take away your desire to be here? Really think about that. And after you have something concrete in your mind, I want want you to meditate on the fact that Christ gave you something that's far more valuable than that thing and far more valuable than anything that you'll experience in this life. He gave you a new life and a life that will last forever without the pain and suffering that we know of in this world. When it comes to our salvation, we know that God sees us as perfect and as beautiful and just as righteous as Christ. The more that we meditate on His word and on His promises, the greater that God becomes in our hearts, and the more that the loves of our hearts become correctly ordered with God at the top. So I pray that we'll all continue to remind ourselves of our value in Christ the next time that we find ourselves trusting in these idols in order to satisfy or complete us. And the next time you find yourself forgetting this, the other thing that I hope that you do is that you'll just ask yourself, what do you mean